So today's topic was about performance, appraisals, reviews, and so on and so forth. And I think if I ask the question, how many of you really look forward to a performance review or an annual appraisal, I think overwhelmingly the response would be, I really don't look forward to it, but a lot of us still do it, right? Uh, so why do we actually have performance reviews? It's really to enhance performance and have growth, right, for individuals and so on, so that we give them opportunities or even ideas on how to grow. So that is the intention. Why the annual performance reviews or appraisals and so on and so forth happen. So interesting, but are they really effective? So that's the question mark. And so there's a lot of research which happened. And interestingly, there's a Harvard Business Review article that I was reading, published in 2016, which actually said that a lot of these big consulting companies themselves are moving away from annual reviews. Okay. And I mean, these are who's and who, right? So even they are moving away from annual reviews. So you can start wondering, obviously, they also realize that they are not really effective. And the article goes on to say that even these well-known companies, Adobe, Dell, Microsoft, IBM, GE, they have also some of them have totally stopped annual reviews. Some of them have transitioning away from it and so on and so forth. And close to 30% of the Fortune 500 companies don't do annual reviews. Okay, so that was what the survey talked about. So why was that? So the article also talked about why is it, what are the issues with typical review systems and so on and so forth. And there are a lot of points. You can maybe glance through it, but I'll just highlight on a few of the ones. So typically reviews are focused on the past. It's about past accountability, whom to put a blame on or trying to blame someone. And there is very little in terms of future improvement, right? So that focus is really past and blame. And if you really think about the way the conversations happen, you recall any of the annual reviews or reviews that you might have been part of, very soon it becomes like a debate, right? The person being reviewed is trying to defend themselves. They're saying that no, I'm actually done a great job, I'm a great performer, etc., etc. And the person reviewing is trying to say that no, you can do better and you have to do better, etc., etc. So so in my own experience, I mean, very interestingly, very early in my career, I used to train people on how to do very good performance appraisals and so on. But I soon realized that it's a complete waste of time, and I stopped doing it. Uh, so the other thing is hindrance to teamwork and collaboration, because what typically starts happening is internal competition within the team, right? And specifically, if you have a grading system, it makes things worse. Like if you say best employee, this guy is the best employee, that guy is not, and you kind of start rating people, and people start seeing how, in comparison, they are being treated. It leads to a lot of politics, reduction of teamwork, and so on and so forth. And it also, there is a lack of agility, because what happens if there's an annual, specifically if there's an annual type of review, then people are trying to benchmark against whatever is supposed to happen in a year's time, right? Whatever they're going to get reviewed on. And if the market is changing, customer requirements are changing, people are not adapting to what's required immediately. So that's the problem with that kind of a system. And there's always a question about, is it really accurate? Is it really objective? Or is it biased? And so on and so forth. And a lot of time gets wasted just on that. Because the moment appraisal happens, later people are unhappy. So trying to reconcile with them, trying to address that issue and so on and so forth. So it's such a waste of time. So a lot of these organizations that I shared, they have started moving away from annual reviews and so on and so forth. Okay. But the article, HBR article, points out that they are still grappling with a lot of issues. And what are these issues? That they are not able to, even though they don't have annual appraisals, aligning of individual and company goals are not happening. They are not able to reward performance better. They're not able to identify who are the poor performers. and legal issues, because with an annual appraisal you have a document saying that this guy is a poor performer, and if you sack him later, then there is a document which says this is the reason why it happened. So if there is no appraisal, then there is no documentary evidence to back them up. So that's the reason again they talk about resistance for HR from HR, and ensuring, so since everything is pushed to, okay, we'll discuss it during the annual review, frequent conversations and frequent feedbacks. No, sorry, this is about the other way around. So these guys have avoided. They're getting out of annual reviews, but even then, they are finding it difficult to give effective and frequent feedback to people and so on. So these are the problems that they are facing, even though they moved out of. And so, is there a better way? Is there a better way, better performance and growth? Is there a better way to do this? So I'll give you a couple of examples from something very close. So one of Golden Square, now it's 29 years old. They're totally self-organizing. I hardly am there. Team takes care of everything. But recently what happened was one of our team members, he celebrated 25 years in Golden Square, right? And everybody was there, yes, to cherish his participation for 25 years and so on. And he was narrating his journey in Golden Square. So he had joined Golden Square, his position that time was, serving tea, coffee, errands, and so on and so forth. He joined with that position. Today, 25 years later, he's handling the sales and marketing for two branches. He is now, in fact, starting a new vertical around real estate. So not depending on our own branches. In fact, he has already closed some 3 deals, and this vertical has happened on its own. I'm just not involved in that. And so he was saying, okay, how he grew. And recently I met a friend of mine, and he remembered. So I just told him, remember Som, and Som is 25 years old now. So this friend of mine had used Golden Square 25 years back, and now also he uses it once in a while for meetings. So we were celebrating his 25 years in Golden Square, and he said, which Som? Is this the Som that who's sending that emails to me? It's so well composed. Okay, so so that is how Som's ability to communicate and deal with people has happened over 25 years. Now, this is in an organization where there is no HR department, there is no L&D department, there is no career plan that anybody is planning for anyone else. And Som is just one example, because I can point to so many other colleagues of mine who have grown over the time, and they've really improved their skills. One of them takes care of accounts. He actually joined in terms, tea, coffee, and so on and so forth. So how does that happen? So how can it happen without L&D department, without somebody career planning, without reviews? We don't have annual reviews and so on and so forth. How does it happen? I'll come to those methods later. But another interesting case study that I'd like you to go through, and I'll be sharing these links later in the group, is the school called ESBZ School in Berlin. Now, it was covered in the Guardian newspaper, and this is the sentence there, which says, "No grades, no timetable, Berlin school turns teaching upside down." And if you later I'll be sharing the link to this case study in this book, Reinventing Organization. ESBC School is covered very well. So I'll give you an example. So who teaches students? Students teach students. Okay. So what do the teachers do? So students have an hour conversation with the teacher individually once a week. And in that conversation, the student actually presents to the teacher what they want to learn and what is it that they want to take up as a challenge. And these are students, school students, not even college students, right? So one example in the book is that this student says that I'm struggling, I'm feeling shy public speaking, right? I'm very uncomfortable speaking in front of people. So the teacher says, okay, fine, what is the idea? How do you want to overcome this fear? and the student says, I've got an idea. In my previous school, they have chess classes. So I'm going to volunteer in that school, and I'm going to tell them that I can come there and teach chess to the lower standard students. So that way I'll get over my fear of public speaking. So I mean, just imagine students actually in charge of their own learning. Okay. Now, if students can do it, why can't it happen in our own organizations? Right. I mean, that's just an amazing example of how much you can leave it to people to grow themselves. And what we can conclude also is, that, I mean, growing and learning and things like that is very, very genuine. I mean, there is a genuine need that people have. We just need to give them the opportunity. So why are all these companies still facing those issues? What's happening? Okay, what's at the root? It's not really about should you have annual appraisals or should you not have it, etc. That's not really the issue, in fact. And what Albert Einstein says is problems can never be solved by the way of thinking that first created them, right? So even though companies have stopped annual appraisals and so on, they're still facing the same issues because the underlying thinking is the same. And that's the reason they still face those issues. So what is that underlying thinking that needs to change? So the traditional way of approach to work really is people don't like work. Okay. And therefore people are coming to work because I have to work. If I don't come to work, who will take care of my family? How will I take care of my family? If I don't work, if I don't do this, my boss will be angry. He'll not give me some promotion or some money, or he'll shout at me. So the whole traditional way of management is really grounded around this type of belief. And it is so ingrained that we don't even realize it, right? And we just do whatever practices we follow in organizations, we just reinforce this particular belief, right? I mean, think about the annual appraisal itself. The underlying assumption is the boss has to somehow get that person to work better next year, right? So the underlying assumption is this, that I have to work. It's not that I want to work. So the liberated approach of is mindset really is, the thinking is, work is actually fulfilling. People want to work. They want to grow. They want to contribute. That's the underlying assumption that we need to work out of. So I want to work is where we need to come from. So that is the belief from which we need to design our organizations. So the key thing really is about individual agency, that really we have to leave it to individuals to develop themselves. And they need to feel, I want to grow, I want to develop, I want to learn something new, I want to do something new. And in fact, Somshekhar was saying the same thing. He was saying that he is 10th standard pass, right? So he was not able to get into college. So he was saying that, see, in Golden Square, I found that this is my college. This is where I can learn everything. So even Sundays, he used to be in the office. Why? Then he could learn something. And he used to keep bugging the other people in the office. Can you teach me this? Can you teach me that? And the interesting thing is they all helped him. They all kind of groomed him very willingly. Okay, so that's the environment that we create. So continuous improvement is really what it's all about. And our job as organization builders is to create that environment that people are happy to support each other and people are hungry to grow, right? Internally, intrinsically. So the design principles really is that the seniors in the organization, people who know stuff, they are there to support, but they're not there to force you, right? They are there to possibly guide you, inspire you, and so on and so forth. But it's really up to each individual to say that I want to learn this. I want to make my capabilities better. The second principle really is to de-link appraisals from pay. Okay, because the moment any feedback or any appraisal is kind of linked to pay, then it becomes a gaming kind of a thing. The person getting feedback is trying to portray that he is he's the star of the organization and so on. Why? Because he doesn't want his pay to be affected, right? So we need to de-link any feedback process, any appraisal process from promotions and pay or incentives and so on and so forth. Because then feedback is purely from the angle of I want to help you improve, or I want to get feedback because I want to help myself grow, right? And then next design principle is fluid organization design, so that people gravitate towards areas that they are very good at and they want to develop into, they want to grow into, right? The moment you have job descriptions, rigid structures, rigid, positions and so on, it kind of hampers uh, organic growth of people, right? Of course, we need other things also happening in the organization, so that I call it triggers and activities. So these are triggers and activities which kind of inspire people to develop themselves. Otherwise, it just becomes a routine, and there is nothing kind of informing people that, hey, there's something interesting I need to learn. There's something interesting that I can develop into, right? And some projects that are there in the arena is really the work sculpting tool, which helps people introspect in terms of how they want to develop themselves, how they want to grow. And the other is energy flow for the team, because then it kind of teams, team members' aspirations start getting aligned to the groups or the units business. Okay, and both start getting aligned, and these two tools kind of work well together. Of course, there are other triggers that we have that help people to start thinking about how do we develop, how do we grow, and so on and so forth, right? So essentially, the key thing is this aspect of I want to work. Okay. And just to remind, I think most of you here have already done the mindsets workshop. So the once we understand these principles around which we can build the organization where I want to work is the feeling with which people are working, a lot of things start getting resolved. Okay. And we have the mindsets workshop coming up this month, 28th, which is the Friday. We have the in-person workshop, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. And the online version is happening from the 1st of April, but just 1 hour every week for 4 weeks, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Tuesdays, so that it's anyone from across the world can join. Most of the world is awake at that time. So that's the reason for that. Okay, so with that, maybe I'll pause now, and any questions, clarifications, anything else you'd like to ask, maybe for 3, 4, 5 minutes, we have some time.
So, with replacement of annual, appraisal, what
Mm-hmm.
you suggest is that we open it to people saying, first delink it along with the revisions and things like that. What
Yes.
is your suggestion?
Yes.
How
How
do
do you
you
transition,
fuel
maybe?
and how do you ensure
Uh,
that the people are growing and
yes.
people are learning? And
Yeah.
how do you ensure that?
Yes. So one is, like you said, de-link the two.
Mhm.
So then feedback becomes a continuous thing. It's not an annual thing. It
Okay.
becomes continuous. Okay.
Okay.
And the second thing is, instead of the team leader taking the initiative for feedback, they just create a meeting maybe where people are, or an occasion where people are able to seek feedback on their own from their peers and from the team leaders as well. So it becomes an individual thing. Okay, guys, I mean, and there are different ways to do it. Again, each organization needs to figure out their own based on what comfort levels and so on. But essentially, we say, see, for your own development, for your own growth, why don't you go about seeking feedback from each other? So that's one way to do it. The work sculpting exercise, on its own, is an interesting way to get feedback, because once people start working on their work sculpting, and then we say, why don't you share and talk about what you want to manifest with your other team members and your team leaders and so on? They might have some suggestions on how you can do this. Okay. So those kind of activities help people. I'll give an example. I think one of the times when we did work sculpting in Golden Square, there's a team member called Aman. So his manifestation was, I want to be the best person in marketing. And he's a youngster. He's just 6, 7, 8 months out of college. And So while he was talking to his team members, I think he came to me also. We just asked him, how will you know you are the best person in marketing if that's your goal, right? And is there a short-term way for you to figure it out for yourself? So he thought about a moment and then he created a manifestation that Golden Square website will be ranked much higher than what it is now. Okay. And then he said, okay, how are you going to do it? Then he thought about it and he himself said, you know what, I think I don't have the skills. So let me enroll for a evening course for online marketing and so on. And he did it out of his own initiative and his own money also. He just spent, he took the course, he did it, and he was so excited about taking Golden Square website to the next level and all of that. So this is how we do it. So we create those triggers where people are able to introspect, they're able to think about their own careers, own growth, and also they're reflecting on how they can use their work as an opportunity to develop themselves.
Okay.
Yeah. So these are the ways, Anurag, to do that.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yes. Any other thoughts? Yes, Anil.
Balaji, can we have some like we have this reinventing organization, same way we have some tools or some companies who have been able to do it? How the appraisal? So again, one is the yearly inflation is there. So
Yeah.
some
Okay.
kind of so
That's a
these
good.
two
So
things.
how the pay increases, etc. happen. Okay. See, there are different ways it happens. Say in an organization like Bootsog and so on, where it's nurses. Okay. I think I need to check it up again, but my hunch is they might have some bands based on experience of the nurse, right? And based on the experience, you get a certain pay scale, and they also measure in terms of number of hours put in, there is some mechanism linked to that. In other organizations, and this is a lovely example. In fact, I was sharing with Anil Rego the other day. So they're in Semco in Brazil. Ricardo Semler. So his organizations. He was sharing in one of the interviews that his hotel. Okay. So he simply said that, see, typically in a hotel, maybe 8% or 10% is the team cost, right? So he said from now on, 8% of the revenue is your compensation for the team. Okay, now you guys decide how that has to be distributed among yourselves, etc., etc., and how many people you need to have, how many, who does what, etc. Totally left to the team. Okay, and he was giving the results. I mean, amazing results in terms of client satisfaction. Okay, in terms of number of the number of people in that hotel is much lower than their peers, but each person gets maybe 40-50% more than their peers in other hotels. Okay, and the whole customer experience is so wonderful. I mean, we can spend some time on that. Sudarshan is maybe seen that video. I don't know. He's nodding a lot.
No,
So,
I'm smiling because the compensation in our company is designed that way, but I don't remember this thing. I mean, I did not know about
okay, didn't know that.
Ricardo.
Yeah. So depending on how much you want people to your team members to get involved in the P&L of the account, you could design the system accordingly, right? So in some cases, maybe you don't want them to really bother about certain aspects of the P&L. Then you can just kind of say, okay, then based on your competence, capability, this is the range that you'll be paid on, right? And on the other hand, it could be totally very in the Semco example, hotel example, it can be very tightly tied to the business economics itself, right? Uh, but once that happens, you don't need to kind of go into conversations like, this year you'll get this much increment or that much increment. There's no need to bargain. Okay, there is a set formula and that's it. So that's the best way to do it. Of course, the exact mechanism might be different, but ideally it is linked to the business model. And there might be certain exceptions which might happen. And I have seen that happen in my business career itself, that because of the economic situations and because your business model is not in line with what is happening in the economy, you might have to pump in more money into the organization and so on and so forth, like COVID, for example. Okay. So COVID time, I mean, then how do you get your people to live, right? In a sense, otherwise they are in a big, you just kind of, then in those are very exceptional situations. Then in that case, I had to bring in money into the organization to support the team, right? But the rest of the time, as much as possible, it is driven by the business model itself.
I think, Balaji, growth somehow, all what we have learned all along is growth is what is your pay packet and what you are doing. Two things
Yeah,
are
sure.
aligned. So how we maybe another one or two example or some companies who have been able to differentiate between the two, where
Huh.
so we
Yeah,
have some examples to bifurcate and
yeah. So, yeah. So in uh, self-driven teams, the conversation or growth doesn't happen because, or the feeling of I have grown in my organization or career doesn't happen because of position. Because there are no titles, there are no designations. Okay, since nobody can become a manager, there's no disappointment that I didn't become a manager. Okay, so the satisfaction, of course, at home when people have to go home, they need to really talk about I'm able to earn more, and so that will happen because the business is doing well and people are contributing to that growth. It's a consequence of that, not really of anything else. But the satisfaction at work really is coming from, am I contributing something useful? And are people benefiting from my work? And that satisfaction is what kind of gives people, that sense of pride and this and that. And of course, the other thing, I learned a new skill, I learned this, etc., which is a natural thing again. And of course, and also having some statements and so on in the organization which says that see, I want you to take a holiday once in a while. So who's going to do your work when you are on a holiday? So do you have anybody else whom you're trained on your work, right? And of course, the rest of the things also come into play. That since we are not kind of measuring who's doing what, etc., so people are they are not afraid of losing their jobs. Okay, if you're not afraid of losing your job, you are very happy to train someone else about what you're doing. Okay, and why you're doing it? So that you free up your time so that you can do something more. So, so that's if you go back to the Somshekhar example that I shared. So nobody felt shy of training Som on certain skills that they were doing because they didn't fear losing their jobs. Som did the same thing for his colleagues, right? When he had two branches to handle, he trained someone else to handle one other branch when he is not there. And it's very organic. Yeah. So,
Yeah, Balaji,
yeah.
yeah, 4 o'clock. So,
Okay, sure.